Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 105. He's Dave Ryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Happy Tuesday to you, Steelers Nation, as we get closer to the draft again. Just a reminder for this week, we're going to have Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and probably, if Dave and I are both still alive, Saturday shows to recap the draft and everything that happens during what's going to be a crazy couple of weeks. But, Dave, I wanted to start with this. We had the question of where Mike Tomlin was this offseason. It was only at 4 pro days. We didn't see him too much. Pretty sure he was at the gym. He was looking pretty swole yesterday.
He certainly noticed that. Yeah, he was looking kind of buff there, and I posted on Twitter. You know that most famous meme or GIF that's floating around right now with the guy that walks into the walks out for. I don't even know where that thing come from. Maybe
I don't know the reference. I don't.
But he walks in and he looks at you. He almost has that daring look on his face and kind of chest out and all like that. Yeah, Mike Tomlin looked like he's taking care of his body this offseason. Looked pretty damn swole there. Is that how the cool kids say it? Swole? Is that the word?
I don't know. You just described the meme to everybody, so I don't know about coolness in this podcast. I think that's out the window.
Fleek or 100 or lit or
you're
Gucci.
Throwing it at the wall, Dave, and nothing's sticking. All right. Well, the reason why we mentioned, of course, Tomlin and Colbert is because, as they annually do, they talk to the media to kind of give their pre-draft state of the union yesterday for the reporters, about a half-hour press conference. Some decent questions. I always wish they would get into some more specifics, but what are you going to do? So, yeah, Tomlin and Colbert talking to the media, a conversation dominated by Colbert, as it should be. I think this time of year you don't get to hear from him too often, so it was good to hear from him. But I guess, where do you want to go with this, David? We'll start with kind of talking about their process. And I thought Colbert made an interesting point, and they've said this before. It's not groundbreaking, but just how they go about their final pre-draft preparations. And the biggest thing they'll do it tomorrow on Wednesday, is go through a mock draft. And it's not a mock of the entire league. They stopped that about 10 years ago, but it's a mock just of their ranking their big board of their top 20 guys, essentially. And Colbert said whoever's the top guy on that list, when we come to pick, that's going to be our guy.
Yeah, I don't think any of that's kind of new. I think we just forget about it come this time every year. I mean, I know it's been it seems like in the past press conferences, Colbert has said that we don't do the traditional mock trying to predict what other teams are going to do any longer. We essentially mock ourselves and go through the list of names, especially in the first round on through. I don't know how far down they go. Did he enlighten us?
He says they go past 20 in case they trade down. I imagine they probably do like a top 30.
Yeah,
top 30, maybe the whole first round.
Top 30, top 35. But I couldn't imagine. Those players have grades, and we don't know the grading system. I mean, is it I don't remember if he shared that with us before, but generally these are 1 through 10 grades, aren't they?
I would imagine so, but I'm not sure how they set it up. Each team could be different. I don't know exactly and what that scale is. What is a 9.0 and above an elite player? I don't know how they grade things specifically. No.
Right, but I wouldn't think that you're going way past let's say 50 in the instant. I mean, yeah, you're ranking them based on grade then, but I don't think you're ranking them so much of how you take them, because another aspect, and this is also nothing new that we got out of Colbert, is, look, if you get in a situation and you have 2 guys in a certain round that you're prepared to take, and one might be higher, ranked just slightly higher than the other, but the lower ranked player better fits scheme or need. If their grade's close enough, then you're going to take the lower ranked player there. So that that's obviously nothing new in that instance. So as far as the process goes, and him, to me, I don't think we learned anything new there. Now, right. I thought his quote, and also not a surprise when it comes to the quote that he had here. He says, drafting for need has never built a winning franchise. And you can't help but go through what he says year in and year out, and then go back to like a couple of years ago with a guy like Artie Burns.
Right.
How in the hell did Artie Burns match? Go with everything that Kevin Colbert kind of tells us. Obviously, their defense would be we had Artie Burns as a top ranked guy in that spot there. Just as they'll tell you last year that Mason Rudolph, we had a first round grade on him, and he got to a certain point and we decided to go up a couple of spots to get him there. So I kind of call BS. I mean, on a few things that Colbert tries to feed us, the whole, first round don't necessarily draft for need. It's weird how you kind of go back through the first round draft picks over the years, and boy, they sure have magically intersected need, in that aspect. But I mean, overall, look, what do you expect him to tell us? He's not going to give us the pick, unfortunately. It would look if he could at least if he could at least let us know who he thinks is going to go in the top 19, that would help.
It sure would.
Quite a bit in that. But the other thing I was disappointed. Why not ask him point blank the pro days that he went to? He's usually forthcoming, with that information. And I was disappointed that wasn't asked. And I think kind of Mike Tomlin went a little bit down that line and said, look, maybe I didn't get to do all the things that I wanted to do, as far as maybe pro day tours this year because of stuff to do with the competition committee and all. And boy, I went scrambling for my tinfoil hat as soon as that Tomlin said that. And we'll talk a little bit more about why I put my tinfoil hat on later in the show there.
Yeah, what my favorite job in the world would be besides this one, of course, and I say that because I'm talking to you now.
Train conductor?
Yeah, just right on cue, man. I swear, I haven't heard a train since I was
look, people listening, people listening for the content, not the train.
Yeah, it usually doesn't sound too bad on the playback. But the guys that get to go in the war room for like the Steeler.com draft feature pieces, and they blur out the background with the board and all that. But I would get that job just to see that board in the editing bay and have that inside information. But anyway,
I would just like to see the whole entire process start to bottom. What actually, how set the board actually is. Is there any last minute? We've heard in the past, Keith Butler say him pounding or standing on a table for a guy. How intense does it get in certain areas when it comes to certain guys? And that would also lead you to believe that, maybe a 1 to 10 system is, used when grading these players, because I can't see there being, that much separation between sets of, let's say, 9, 10, 11 guys or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, try to go back and find some information on Ron Hughes' scouting system. That's basically the model the Steelers still use. As Colbert, with Ron Hughes was basically Colbert's mentor in Detroit, and then Colbert hired him for Pittsburgh, where he scouted for a long time. So maybe we can get some information there. But you're not going to get a ton of information from these guys, unfortunately. I wish they would ask more about pro days, some more maybe player specific, to an extent, kind of questions. But one thing that was probably the most notable thing for me, and maybe I'm clutching my pearls here a little bit too much, but we know the Steelers are generally kind of a go with your gut, not a heavy analytics organization. And that seemed reinforced by one thing Colbert said yesterday that really surprised me, is that they don't use a trade value chart at all. Everyone has different charts. Everyone knows the famous Jimmy Johnson one, and most teams have strayed and they have slightly different variations. Everyone's chart's usually relatively close, but according to Colbert, he says they don't use one at all. He says, quote, "People talk about the charts. We don't use a chart. We know other teams will use a chart, and we know when we call them, they're going to say, well, it doesn't match our chart value, and that's fine. They can do that. But in our minds, we have to spend what we want to spend if we want a certain player, and we have to demand if teams try to trade up to us, we don't follow a chart. We know what they're saying, and that's up to them, but we'll make up our own values." listen, I'm not saying to be beholden to these numbers, but I think it's a really useful and helpful guide. I talked to one former scout yesterday, and he said it's pretty unusual to hear a team not use a chart at all.
Yeah, I don't think that's really kind of anything. I think he's kind of told us that before, has he not?
That's first I remember hearing it, at least.
And obviously I think he's kind of insinuated that previously this offseason here, and like I said, some of these things, to me, I don't think we're let's shoot. How long has he been here? Since 2019. 19 years in, and all of a sudden discovering that he doesn't use a chart there. They might use it as a guide, a loose guide. What is probably another team going to expect? But I mean, I really have always viewed Colbert as more stingier in certain situations. And maybe that's perhaps why you haven't seen this team be able to trade up more in recent years. Look, you weren't even old enough. You and most people listening to this podcast weren't even old enough to drink the last time Kevin Colbert traded up in the first round, right? 2004, right?
Well, no, Santonio was after.
What was it? 2006. I'm drawing a blank on that.
It was the Santonio Holmes, 32 to 25. Right. Troy was Troy and Santonio are the two guys he's traded up for. I think he traded back to get Casey Hampton. I think that was early on.
Right. 2006 was the last time that Kevin Colbert traded up into the first round. As you said, a couple years before that was with Troy Polamalu. I mean, it's got to, and I thought he kind of laid out, Didi Kinklerbala, I think, tried to basically get him to identify any players that he's so in love with this year that he'd be willing to trade up with, and obviously he didn't just divulge that information. Then the follow-up question later was, what has to happen for a certain player? How far does a player have to fall? And he answered that question more along the lines of he really didn't give a direct answer in it, just that they thought that a player should go by X amount, and when it got to like Troy got to what was it, like 16 or whatnot, they thought that was far enough that he certainly should have gone by then, and then that made the decision to go up there. So we really didn't get any hard how far does X player have to fall? I think you're working the phones ahead of time to at least let people know, that you're willing to go up.
Sure.
And then, you're obviously not going to tell them who you're going up for, but I think you lay out the groundwork that, hey, when you get up on the clock here, we're probably going to call you, if a certain player drops here. Are you interested at least in hearing, an option? Neither team's going to be yes or no. And as Kevin Colbert also identified yesterday, when it comes to their setting their board, they'll identify players that it doesn't matter if teams want to call them and come up to their spot, that no way are they moving out of that spot because they want X player. So I imagine there are other teams do something similar to that as well there. So look, people you ought to see on my social media, on Twitter, people just think that all you do is push a button and a trade materializes, like this is Madden or something. Kevin Colbert's probably cheaper when it comes to offering trade compensation. And in fact, if the Steelers do move up in the first round this year, I will be shocked if it's more than let's say a third and a fifth or something like that. I just can't see Kevin Colbert coming off of a second, or anything like, maybe he comes off of a third next year, but because they got a compensatory pick hopefully coming for Le'Veon Bell. But I just cannot see Kevin Colbert giving up a second round pick this year to move up. I can see him giving up a third, but after a third this year, I don't think he would give up a fourth this year, but I do think he'd give up a fifth. So for them to move up, I would think Kevin would only be willing to give up a third and fifth, and that's it.
Well, they gave a third and a fourth for Santonio, so I think, and without a trade chart, you kind of just are winging it. So I could see a third and a fourth. I could see a third and something next year. I don't see the second, but I could see I think you have to be aggressive. And like I said, with the trade chart, I'm not saying you have to, use it 100%, but it's a good guide. When the most chaotic part about the draft process is the trading aspect. By basically Wednesday, and probably by now, you have your board set. So you're just kind of following your board. That's not too chaotic, at least from an organizational point of view. But the trading is, because everyone's on the clock. You got time running out. You got competing trade offers, trying to figure out, you're talking to this team, talking to this team. This team's calling you about trading up. There's a lot going on. You don't have that trade chart at all to have any sort of point of reference. It can get chaotic. And I think that's where you start making mistakes. And as we've seen this team in the past, they tried to trade up for guys like Trey Waynes. They definitely tried to trade up for Rashaan Evans last year.
We think.
Reported.
Reportedly.
Reliably reported. Let's assume that those reports are true. And maybe one reason why they've had trouble sealing the deal is, as you mentioned, they just haven't been able to match teams' value because they aren't going with any sort of chart. They aren't understanding what the other team's frame of reference might be or be close to. Maybe that's why they're having a tough time. And as much as we've talked about knowing their interest in Devin Bush and likely that they're going to make an attempt to trade up for him. We'll see. It depends on how high he goes and how everything kind of plays out. But you think there's going to be maybe an attempt to do so. You'd like to have that as a guide. So I'm just saying it was a little surprising because I think that it's very unusual compared to what the rest of the league does. And I don't think it helps him at all to not have any sort of trade value chart.
We've been the talk right now is the Steelers have to jump in, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, I think, probably later in the show here. But, the common, I guess right now is that the Steelers would have to jump up to like 8 or 9 or something like that in order to get a guy like Devin Bush. I mean, who in their right mind? I think a team would be stupid like the Lions at 8 to trade down 12 spots for a third. Let's say a third and a fourth. Let's go with your line of thinking, a third and a fourth. I just think they would be silly unless they absolutely knew that the player that they really covet in the first round would be there 12 picks later. And then basically what you're doing is you're just getting free, definitely a free third and fourth round pick at that point. If you're totally fine with dropping down 12 points, knowing that you're going to get, let's say, one of 3 players, and you're okay with that, then okay, move down but I just personally, I think I'll be shocked if the Steelers go up that high. Now I can see them going up 3-4 spots maybe. But outside, and that's why it gets so tiring. We get sent all these scenarios, and all. God bless you guys. But I mean, trying to guess this, and then now factoring in, Tomlin or Colbert not even using a trade chart. I mean, it's just you're just throwing a dart,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think a 3 and a 4 is going to be able to be enough to get to 8. I think it could be enough to get somewhere maybe 5 spots higher, but I also won't totally discount them moving significant spots. They moved up 7 for Holmes. They moved up 11 for Troy. So they have made those bigger leaps before. Now, granted, they were coming from lower spots to more medium spots, so it costs less to do so. It's cheaper to go from 11 spots from 27 than it is to go 11 spots when you're picking a 20 to try to get to 9. So I understand that, but my guess is if they were to move up, Devin Bush would have to fall into the teens, maybe the 14, 15 range. Then you go up about 5 spots, maybe give up a 3 and a 4 to do that. That's probably the scenario where it happens. I'm not expecting that. I think Cincinnati at 11 is going to be.
All right, hold on to that thought because we're going to hit that later.
Okay, yeah. I'm not going to go into too deep there, but I think that's that's definitely the choke point, I guess you could say, of where Bush might go. And if he falls past that, maybe then you have the conversation. But we'll touch on that later. Anyway, I just want to say him not using the trade chart surprised me. I think it's a bad move, and I think it just kind of harkens back to their very gut-oriented organization, which can work out. But I think at the same time, it's useful to have the analytical approach, especially for a league that's evolving heavily into the numbers game. I just don't want the Steelers to be left behind here.
Yeah, and obviously if they don't trade up and get a linebacker, people are going to say, well, Kevin Colbert failed. He didn't trade up. You don't know how hard they're trying. They can you don't know what they offer,
Right.
So people saying, oh, they should fire him. He didn't trade up. Well, how do you even know, like you said, there was reported reports last year about them, trying to maybe go after those linebackers. We don't know what they offered. We don't know how hard they tried or didn't try or whatever. Unless we hear it from the horse's mouth or another team, which I don't think we've heard. No. You don't know. So how can you criticize somebody? I mean, you're criticizing them for the end result. It's a result-based bias that you have no factual information on, only reported, really mostly probably speculation more than anything there. But look, you just don't push a button and this happens. This isn't Madden.
Exactly. Dave, what else did Colbert say? Anything else he said that caught your attention?
Let's see. He talked about the whole. Where is it here? He talked about the addition, obviously, of Steven Nelson, Mark Barron, and Dante Moncrief, and how the addition of those three guys will not preclude the team from addressing those positions at any point during the draft. That obviously wasn't a surprise there. So thus, if the team finds them a linebacker or a cornerback or a wide receiver or whatever, this is, and we've mentioned this before during the offseason, what Kevin Colbert did this offseason as far as free agents go should be viewed as nothing new. They were all kind of, and look, I know people look at the values of those contracts and say, well, that's a little bit higher. You had guys in there making more than what averaging more than what Mike Mitchell made several years ago. Well, yeah, and you also have. How many years has it been since the Mike Mitchell signing as well, too? You believe it was like 2015?
Was it earlier than that? Maybe it was 2015. Yeah, it was a little while ago, but I still thought they were more aggressive and spent more than I think most people anticipated.
They did. But they had to cap a little bit more cap space to do it this year too.
Well, that's why I thought they would be aggressive. Going back to the conversation we had, I thought they would sign one big name, then it'd be Steven Nelson with two little smaller deals, and that was with Moncrief and Barron, because A, they had more cap space, B, the window's closing, and C, they had all these draft holes, and now they fit themselves up really well, where they have the flexibility to go in really any direction they want to in the first round, and that's what makes this pick so tough to project outside of Devin Bush, because there is no glaring need on this roster right now, which is good job by Colbert.
You and your people, and you with the windows closing.
Well,
where's this window?
It's closing.
It's been closing for like the last 10 years.
No, it hasn't. You have to admit. It's a closing window. It's not that it's closed, but obviously, as Ben gets older, as you lose pieces, as the line's only going to stay together for so long, like. You can't deny that the window is shrinking. I think Colbert might have even admitted that. Someone did.
All right. Moving on to what else he said. He gave an update on the roster numbers, and I don't think Kevin Colbert might need Dave Kahn as an advisor here, because I don't think Kevin Colbert gets daily updates on certain things like cap related and all like that. But I understand why he probably threw out the numbers that he did throw out. He said 74 players currently under contract. Now, when you consider that Mike Hilton has not signed his exclusive rights tender yet, and when you consider that Xavier Grimble just a few days ago signed his restricted free agent tender, maybe Kevin Colbert doesn't know that Xavier Grimble signed his restricted tender. If you're going to count that, then yeah, they only have 74 players under contract.
Is there something with Shazier too? Is he assuming Shazier is not going to count soon? I don't know if that played into.
Well, he's still going to count against your
right. But when's he going to go on PUP? Maybe Colbert's just assuming
he has not been moved to reserve PUP yet, as far as I remember on the official transaction list. Now that's coming.
I think it'll be in May sometime.
Right, it's coming, but it hasn't happened yet.
Right. But maybe he's just in his head already counting Shazier.
Yeah, but he's still under contract.
I know. I'm just saying. I'm trying to figure out why Colbert said 74, because we believe it's supposed to be 76 if you count Hilton and everybody that is under contract or presumed to be under contract will be under contract.
Right, and in fact, for salary cap purposes, once a tender's out there floating, then the NFLPA considers that player, technically under contract, because the money counts in the top 51 against or could potentially count against the top 51 if that player is in the 51. Anyway, moving on from that housekeeping there, he did say that they can have once again a 91-man off-season roster here again, and because Christian, I like how he calls him Scotty. Beat me up, Scotty. Christian Scotland Williamson is not exempt again for the second year because he'll be under the international player program there, so they can have a 91-man roster once Shazier gets moved to reserve PUP. He won't count against that. I don't think he counts. I don't think once guys get moved that way. I'm trying to remember if he's going to count or not.
They did change the rule. I don't remember which way they changed it though. Them counting or them not counting. I want to say they don't count.
Yeah, I don't think they do either, but we'll have to see. Yeah, I don't think they do either.
Like during the regular season, they wouldn't count if they were on reserve PUP.
Right, so. But I think they changed it and I think that was one of the big changes too, is that they could do that move earlier too.
Yeah.
And also could place players on injured reserve as well. So I have to go back and look at my notes, but I don't think he's going to count against the 91 once he's moved to reserve PUP. Anyway, we're getting bogged down in stuff that
as opposed to the other shows. Right. Never happens.
Let's move on with some of the other things that he had to say there. How much do getting the veterans have impact on the draft or for those positions? I thought it was something interesting that he said it there. He says, we the people we draft, the longer we can keep them off the field. He went Dick LeBeau on us. The people we draft, the longer we keep them off the field, the better for them historically. And yeah, I mean, obviously you don't want to have to throw a rookie out there right away. He did bring up instances, of course, when Marquise Pouncey, his rookie season, of course, Ben Roethlisberger having to play when Tommy Maddox went down, his rookie season. But he says, but you really want to go in with these players and delay them getting on the field as long as you can, because over time, I think coach would get comfortable with what they could do, but have them have to step out and play more often than not. I think it's more detrimental to the player, and if he loses his confidence early, it's usually not returnable. Now, when you talk about lost confidence, your mind quickly goes to one Artie Burns, but Artie wasn't a starter until like week 8 or so his rookie season, right?
Well, yeah, he got a role early. Even that week 1 game against Washington, they put him in for like 9 snaps. But he played. I'm doing a study on this actually that kind of really counters to what Colbert says here. But Artie played 77% of the snaps his rookie year, so he played quite a bit.
Right. Now, I know right from when he got on the field, I don't know if it was against Baltimore was his first start as a rookie. Can you pull up his?
I can pull it up. I know he played in week 1. He didn't start. I don't know when his first start was.
But I think like week 8, the game that DHB got hurt in with the foot or whatnot, I thought that might have been Artie Burns' first kind of official start.
I'll look it up and see how good Dave's memory is. Yep, Baltimore. Thank you.
How about that?
Savant Dave. Baltimore week.
Yeah, Deputy Wapner. That's over your head too. Have you even seen Rain Man?
I no, but I know I get the culture reference now with what you're getting.
Golly,
that's an old movie, isn't it? It's not a new movie.
I guess it is by now an old movie.
Young.
Yeah, back when the damn near burned my feet on the earth back there.
Hey, already had a pick that game.
Yeah, he did. That was the ill-advised. That was one of those poor throws by Flacco, wasn't it? Back towards the middle of the field.
Yeah. I think I'm getting Sean Davis mixed up.
Huh?
I know Sean Davis had a pick. I think maybe also against Baltimore. But
yeah,
that
it was too. But that was one of the ones that ill-advised back to the middle of the field. But I already did have a pick in that. But what I'm getting at here is Artie did not start. How many it'd be interesting to look back how many actual defensive snaps Artie had from week 1 through 7. They couldn't have been many, right? I mean, I know you said he played like 11 in week 1. I'm trying to remember who may or may not have gotten injured.
I mean, he was playing rotational snaps. I don't know how heavy they were. I can start looking it up now. Again, he played like 9 that first week. Let me just pick a random week here for you. Football Outsiders is a great resource for snap counts. That's my go-to. And see, it's probably like 20 to 30 if you're going to get to 77 for the entire season, starting the back half of it. Already played 13 in week 5. I'll just click around to week 6. Probably about that 10 to 20 per game until he cracked the lineup. Only played 49 in week 6. I think someone might have gotten hurt. So the snap count rose throughout the year. And generally speaking, with even guys like Jarvis, Shazier until he got hurt, Bud, TJ Watt, I mean, these guys play pretty heavily. But I'll have a study coming out either today, tomorrow, at some point, delving into this information.
I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, look, it's nice not to have to use some of these guys early, but, sure. I mean, yeah, you better have at least closely look. I mean, Terrell Edmunds last year had played the second most snaps on defense behind only his counterpart back there, Sean Davis, right?
Played more snaps than I think any rookie except for I think Quentin Nelson.
Okay, well there you go. And look, I mean, obviously they didn't think that was going to have to happen, but you know, with Morgan Burnett, you know, being injured, and look, once you get him out there for 3 or 4 games, you probably figure, geez, you might as well keep the process learning here. And obviously now, if you think it's going to be detrimental, you know, and work against you, you obviously don't want to do it. But Mike Tomlin was asked how did Terrell Edmunds play last year. He says Edmunds played more than I think, or this is Colbert. He says Edmunds played more than I think we predicted, and I think over time throughout the fall he got better. Was he ready for that? I don't think so. Coach can address that as well. But by the end of the season, we felt more comfortable. But had he been a backup situation, I think it would have been more beneficial for him. Mike Tomlin chimed in and said his play was above the line, but it wasn't born out of an opportunity earned. So there's a bit of a shot fired there. And it's honest. I mean, he didn't earn the starting opportunity or the playing time that he got early in the season. It was really just out of the lack of availability of others. So you are less comfortable with that, but his play was above the line. Well, I mean, they got enough experience now. You talk about players in second-year jumps. Edmunds, we should see that second-year jump this year. So, obviously asked about the wide receiver room. What did you think about comments related to that?
Just the standard stuff from Tomlin, comfortable with the group. Of course, the big name we're looking to, and, Tomlin, very honest and not calling him out, but making him the guy is James Washington, the man that has to step up. So looking for him to take the biggest jump, as possible from year 1 to year 2.
He was asked about the wide receiver class and the past success of drafting the position. He says it's a deep class. I can't say that it's elite like it has been in the past, where I think you could easily identify one guy as the top guy. I think if you polled 32 teams, you'd probably get variations on who they have as their top guy, because I don't think it's a universal class that has 2 or 3 elite players. But there are certainly players that are going to help individual teams. So I like that from that standpoint. We have had some good fortune with receivers, and it's really no different from how we evaluate any other position. I do like to mention that they play with a Hall of Fame capable quarterback, so I think that doesn't hurt our receivers as they continue to develop. He also was asked about struggles drafting cornerbacks over the year. And this is an interesting answer here, I think. Here, most of the corners that we've taken, sometimes we forget about Bryant McFadden and Ike Taylor. They were significant starters on Super Bowl winning teams. Some of the other guys you have made, some of the other guys have made it, and they've been contributors. Maybe not here, but they moved on to different teams. And they were just different reasons why we made different decisions in each of those cases. And a lot of times it's a medical situation where the players we look where we took were injured. I think Hawthorne and Golson
is the biggest name.
Names that you could definitely put in there. So again, we don't evaluate corners any different than we do receivers. It's just fortunate that it sometimes works out better. Let's see, experience and thoughts on how first round plays out. I don't think there's anything there. What else? As I scan this. He goes to other teams' boards affecting the Steelers mock. He says, look, we put ourselves first, and we pick a player. That player is gone. Now we put ourselves second. Then we pick a player, and so on. Mocking. That can't be very fun, right?
Yeah, I think it's just doing the necessary legwork to make that draft day clarity there. So there, because this isn't like movie draft day where during the draft you're having these heated arguments and debates and going back to the tape. All that's done these last couple weeks where you've had the arguments and you've hashed everything out, kind of created your rankings. By draft day, you're sitting there with your board, and as Colbert said, and I believe he's 100% accurate and honest when he says it, the only thing that really changes dramatically is the potential to trade up or down. But you have your boards, you have your guys. There is no craziness. You're following your guide by the time you hit Thursday.
All right, positions that don't need to be drafted. Kevin Colbert says, no, we're never going to close the door. And I thought for sure he'd say, well, quarterback's out this year.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way they're going to draft a quarterback, right?
Nah, I think we're okay.
No, we're never going to close the door on any position because if it's a great player available at a position and you think you're great at, you're probably going to pass greatness for mediocrity, and that'll eventually kept up with. That's nothing new from the Kevin Colbert quote line, over the years as well. Let's see, how many guys do you absolutely love? I think we already covered that.
How about 150 guys on their board? Just to kind of frame this process. There's 800.
I think he's told us. I think he's told us that before.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't think it's new, but I think it's worth reminding people of how small these lists are. And Colbert says as you get into day 3, these drafts really expand out, and everyone's going in different directions. So that's why you get maybe this pick that you haven't heard of or didn't think it was going to go in this round, because everyone's board is different. But yeah, you take this list of probably 1,200 names initially when you go through Blesto and National and kind of your, all the seniors available, and you find the guys that fit. Your board's 150, and as Colbert says, their plan is to pick all their picks from that 150.
And I think if push comes to shove, if we had to name, if given the opportunity to name 100 names, I bet we could come up with a good portion of those that are on that 150 board.
I hope so.
I would hope we would be able to at this point. But yeah, look, if you go back from past drafts and the things, the methods that this team has used and all like that, it shouldn't be hard, with scheme fit and height, weight, measurable, and character. Look, it should not be hard to narrow it down, at least to get 100 of that 150.
Mm-hmm. That was all I really had for Colbert. Again, I wish I would have heard more about pro days. I wish they would have asked me about, I know it wasn't a draft question, but Mike Hilton. I would love to know that situation. But
I would like them to ask more about how much analytics plays in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be great.
In grading and ranking some of these players. Do they use Spark? It sure looks like they use Spark sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff. But yeah. I came away with it kind of, okay, yeah, something to write about, but I my day wasn't changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to hear about process. I'm a big process guy. I just would love to know, who's in that mock draft meeting on Wednesday? Is it everybody? Is it just Tomlin, Colbert, and Phil Kreidler? The Raiders, the big story was they sent scouts home. They're not coming back at all, maybe, or I guess for the draft. I'm not sure exactly how they're working it, but, who's in that inner circle? Or is it because the continuity is so strong with the scouting, staff that everybody gets involved? I'd love to know that, but obviously we didn't get that question.
Yeah, he says, have you changed the process of how you evaluate players? I think in a social media question was asked in there as well. And look, Mike Tomlin said, I think equally as interesting is when you talk about trends in recent years in the number of I wonder if I thought maybe Mike Tomlin was trying to speak to me.
All right, Dave. I think we've hit the draft point where you're all drafted out.
I think equally as interesting when you talk about trends in recent years is the number of sub-package players on both sides of the ball, whether it's defensive nickels or sub-package linebackers or third down back-like people, slot receivers. When you talk about what's trending or what's surprising from a depth standpoint is probably the number of guys who specialize in sub-package play and then seeing them execute those assignments on film. That's an interesting element of what's trending. Nickel corners, sub-package linebackers, slot receivers, third down backs, seeing more specialization and more of those guys. Are they going to get more of a specialized guy in the first round?
Well,
could they?
Yeah, there's one name we'll talk about. We can talk about him now. We can talk about him a little bit later.
We'll talk about him in a little bit here.
All right. Anything else with Colbert? We can already want to wrap that up and move on.
Just the team's philosophy. Reiterating what he had said earlier. Drafting for need has never built a winning franchise. I thought that was one of the key quotes to kind of, or something that he's going to be quoted about the most over the next few days, saying there. I'm trying to look through anything else there. I think we hit on that pretty good. We'll try to recap anything we missed on that come on the Thursday show. So now that we spent, I don't know how long, 30 minutes on Colbert and Tomlin, I guess we should get to a few of these mock drafts that you guys are putting together here.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of mock drafts from the whole Depot staff. I think everybody that's worked heavily in the draft process. Daniel Valente had his first mock draft come up yesterday. I thought it was a really interesting mock draft. I think it got really good feedback. I'll read the picks off basically, and we'll talk about it, Dave. With the 20th pick, he has them going with Clemson edge Clelin Ferrell, who we've talked about extensively. Makes a lot of sense. Really checks every single box. Can play right away with a starting role in 2020. I'll read the first couple, and then I'll get your temperature on him. With the second round, he went with Juan Thornhill, who I think would be a great pick from Virginia. A sparky safety, 13 interceptions. Talk about playmaker, splash. I mean, that's the dude. And then with his 2 third-round picks, very solid. Miles Boykin, the receiver from Notre Dame, and at 83, David Long Jr., the West Virginia linebacker. So I thought that was a solid, day 1 and day 2 worth of selections.
Yeah, Clelin Ferrell's one of those guys that seems you throw him out there and you really causes controversy because a lot of people that you know that we know haven't watched a lot of tape on him will say, well, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. And as you saw, if you follow me on Twitter this past week, I showed you instances of where he dropped into coverage. I show you instances where he ran out in space with a running back out to the flat and stuff like that. And here's something interesting as well, too, Alex, and I don't think a lot of people, and we haven't talked about this a lot, during we don't have a complete statistical combine athletic picture of Clelin Ferrell because he didn't do certain things because of a turf toe problem this offseason, one that he aggravated during training. This is the same turf toe that he played through for numerous games in 2018. And I think if you go back, I know from what I did, go back and you watch his 2017 tape, and then you compare it to his 2018 tape, I think it's noticeable how that toe injury affected him. I think you see more. Now, look, he's not. Nobody's going to try to hop up on a box and say this guy is an elite bender, turner, corner turner, or anything like that. But I think you're able to see during the 2017 season when he didn't have that injury, some athleticism that you don't see on his 2018 tape, and I really think that's has to do with the toe injury. And on top of that, it sure seems like he dropped more in 2017 than he did in 2018. And heck, you throw in that Auburn game from 2017. That's a perfect one. That one or the FSU game from 2017 are great games to watch from him as far as kind of what he can do. And I think you mentioned a 2018 North Carolina State tape just recently when we talked about Clelin Ferrell as well too. It just makes you wonder how much was he asked to drop a little less in 2018 because of that toe injury. That would make a lot of sense. I mean, do you want a guy dealing with a turf toe to have to COD, change of direction that much, and if you can limit it as much as possible there, I think it's possible there. Look, is he the perfect edge candidate, outside linebacker candidate for the Steelers? Probably not, but he fits regardless. And boy, you want to talk about a guy with a crystal clean character, a guy that checks every other's single box you could throw out there. It's Clelin Ferrell. So yeah, I don't hate Daniel for that pick. The Juan Thornhill is an interesting one, just from the aspect of how many times he was able to take the ball away during his college career, but putting the pieces of the puzzle together, with the Blues Clues and all, like we have talked about all throughout this offseason. There's a few boxes he doesn't check, I guess, when it comes to that. But I don't think there's a lot of people that would get up and put a hole through the TV if Juan Thornhill was to pick in the second round. Of course, he is a Virginia boy from Mike Tomlin's area there, so I'm sure Mike Tomlin already knows quite a bit about him there. I don't take issue with that mock pick there. And Miles Boykin is a guy we've talked about excessively ever since probably not since the combine, but not long after the combine, a guy that could potentially be the X receiver the Steelers choose this year.
Yeah, really solid across the board. Yeah, that was a great point about Farrell, though. I thought the turf toe injury happened during the pre-draft process. I didn't realize it happened during the season, so that's great nugget of information and makes a lot of sense. For the rest of Daniel's mock, I'll just read through the rest of day 3 here. In the 4th round, Houston cornerback Isaiah Johnson. That was a little bit lower than
did you mention David Long or no?
I did, yeah.
Okay. I mean, probably a little bit early for him there, but, I mean, we never got to see him run. Do other things because of an ankle injury that he suffered during, I think, the Senior Bowl week there. So, David Long Jr. is one of those guys I have circled just to see not only when and who he goes to, but kind of the career path there, because this is a guy that made a lot. You want to talk about a guy that made a lot of plays, a lot of stat sheet plays in college. It's him. Now, on the flip side, he missed a lot of tackles. Yeah, he did there. And a lot of times you can see where it looks like he's guessing more than reading his keys there. So it's going to be interesting to see him. Is this guy just going to be a special teams guy and kind of a bit player in the NFL, or does he have legitimate starting capabilities? I think if you're going to draft a guy in the 3rd round, you do so with the hope that this guy's going to be a key contributor, but that might be a little bit high on David Long Jr. there. And he's a guy that I'm actually kind of a little bit of a fan of, but I think that might be a little high.
Yeah, I thought it was a decent range. We'll talk about it in my mock because we have a pretty similar pick there. But in the 4th round, again, Houston corner, Isaiah Johnson. I thought that was a little low for where Johnson's going to go, but I like the pick. The interest is there. At Colbert at Houston's pro day, receiver, turn corner, fits a lot of those boxes. 5th round, Deontay Johnson, the receiver from Toledo, slot guy, return specialist. Steelers at their pro day, Danny Smith was there. I think Darryl Drake was as well, so it makes sense there. Came in for a pre-draft visit. Elise Mack in the 6th round with a tight end. I think tight end's a little bit low here, but a guy they've shown interest in at the pro day, brought in for a visit, strong senior season, so it makes sense. Travis Homer with the middle pick in the 6th round, running back from Miami, Florida, versatile guy, special teams capable, brought in for a visit. So again, just kind of doc connecting all these picks here. Pretty popular pick with 207, Matt Gay, the kicker from Utah, who I think we've talked about quite a bit about if they're going to take a kicker. We think Matt Gay probably fits better than most other selections. And then in the 7th round, at 219, Wisconsin outside linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel, which I'll have a report on, probably up by the time you're listening to this podcast. An athletic guy, dropping the coverage, hard worker, tough dude, also brought in for a pre-draft visit.
Yeah, everybody should know my thoughts on Isaiah Johnson. Kind of, to me, a good comp as far as current Steelers players go, Brian Johnson.
Brian Allen.
I mean, Brian Allen. I'm looking at his last name here. Calling him Brian Johnson. Brian Allen, out of the converted player and kind of little robotic, stiff, stiff at some points. We'll gamble on some plays, and I think Brian Allen too. I mean, we saw that during a preseason or this past year. We saw Brian Allen kind of be a little bit more of a gambler, I thought. So I really think you can compare those two there. Obviously, I think Johnson's a little bit, maybe on paper, a little bit better athlete, right?
Isaiah Johnson, yeah, I think Isaiah Johnson's a little bit more wiry, but probably a better athlete.
Right. Deontay, this is a Johnson draft here. Deontay, look, I mean, if you don't have Miles Boykin in your muck, and obviously Daniel double dipped here, and I got he's got a draft, something in draft about potential maybe the Steelers double dipping at the wide receiver position this year. If you don't have Miles Boykin in your mock, if you don't have David Seals in your mock, maybe you probably should have Deontay Johnson in your mock. I think one of those 3 wide receivers is a good bet. Is a good bet to be maybe the wide receiver drafted this year. Elise Mack, I mean, I get it, brought in for a pre-draft visit, but this is a guy that is easy to shoot holes into, if you ask me. And plus, he had I think he had the year of ineligibility there at Notre Dame for academic reasons. I mean, I'm not going to get too down on him for that. I mean, me and academic criticizing people for academics. That's not the
pots and kettles.
Yeah, the whole black pot and black kettle thing there. But he was also suspended, I think, for one other game for violating team whatever rules or whatnot. So it's not surprising they bring this guy in just to see what's underneath the hood, if you know what I'm saying there. So I'd be a little bit more, and not a great blocker overall. I don't think in Max so easy to shoot holes in that. Homer, look, I mean Travis Homer out of Miami, I think could potentially be a fit. Obviously with Matt Gay, the kicker, I'm not gonna criticize anybody if they have a kicker or a punter in a mock draft. To be quite honest with you, Alex, I mean, I think kicker's a lot more likely than punter, but I get it, and especially if you hold on to all these picks and all like that, why not throw a 6-rounder at a top kicker in this draft? And Andrew Van Ginkel's a guy we already talked a little bit about. I can't wait to read your profile on with him. You can do a lot of things with this guy. I mean, he is even a guy that maybe even you think about seeing how he looks in the middle of the field. I don't think it's ideal, obviously, but boy, the athleticism sure looks like it's there, and just a fun player to watch play football. And I think you'll agree, a little bit light in the pants.
Oh, yeah, very, very much so. But he's a playmaker. Dude takes the ball away. He rips the football out. He tacks it in coverage.
Well, what do you think about that play against Purdue?
I don't know. Did I watch the Purdue game? I have to go back.
The one he chases the pass out to the right side and all the way down the sideline, almost into the end zone, and then knocks the ball out from behind for a turnover into the end zone. I mean, just hard-working guy. But really, look, like I said, if you watch enough tape on Van Ginkel, you'll see him get thrown out of the club.
Oh, I mean, his punch is very weak. He's got no punch.
Right. I mean, he needs to get stronger. But, boy, you want to talk about a guy that can be a 53rd guy just from a special team standpoint.
Sure.
It's him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Daniel has a decent comp to Travis Feeney. I think he was a little less athletic than that, a little more clunky, but I think has a similar profile to Travis Feeney, and without the shoulder concerns and injury concerns that Feeney had to kind of knock him out. So I thought a good mock draft. The only thing I would caution with him is, he has 7 pre-draft visitors in here, and, there's nothing wrong with putting in pre-draft visitors. They make the most sense, but, we know historically you're not going to get more than probably 4 at max pre-draft visitors come in. Just not going to happen. So, it's a realistic mock in the sense of guys that have come in, guys they've shown interest in, but they're not going to take 7 pre-draft visitors. That'd be the thing I would say.
Yeah, that he just maybe a tad bit heavy in that, but I mean, you understand the direction that he went in there. All right, let's put yours up. Let's mock your mock.
Yep. You can yell at my mock draft, and then I went for 20 here. Dave, I had the toughest time with this. I mean, I've had my mind set on 3 different guys here, going back and forth, saying, okay, I'm sticking with this guy at 20. Then 5 minutes later, I go, okay, I'm sticking with this other guy at 20.
I don't feel bad. Don't feel I do bad. I do the same thing. And the moment I push, publish on my final mock draft, I wish I have gone another direction.
Oh, yeah. I literally have a 30-page Word document of just different mock drafts and different scenarios and trying to figure out which one I like best. I'm pretty sure I have, Ben Bannigo as a 20th pick at some point in one of these mock drafts. So, but it would have came down to, for me, if Devin Bush is there, if they can trade up for him, he's the guy. Devin Bush is number 1 in my book, but I don't believe he's going to be there at 20. So for me, it came down to 3 names in this order: Greedy Williams, Darnell Savage, and Clelin Ferrell. It was really close between Williams and Savage, and I think personally, I might take Savage over Greedy Williams, but I think in reality they are going to take Greedy Williams. I think what Colbert said about finding playmakers at the expense of guys that aren't maybe the best tacklers is the direction that they're going to go. I think he checks every box. I think he's a high character guy. I think people kind of have these question marks though about his character. I'm not sure where they came from. I read some stories on him. I think he's a good character guy. I think the interest is real. Talk about a man coverage corner, which is what Steelers run now. They're a man heavy team. You won't find a better man cover corner than Greedy Williams.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has been attached to him that we have really, I mean, there's no, I think I've read some stuff, maybe work ethic, but I think a lot of this is speculation from the outside. I don't, unless a scout has kind of floated us out there. The whole character thing, I don't think he's been arrested or anything like that, right? I mean,
no.
It's hard to research down what exactly the the character issue is with Greedy.
I think there's a perceived lack of effort, which may be a little true, but I think less true than people make it out to be.
Okay, and if you go back and watch his pro day, both his combine interview and his pro day interview, he's a very likable kid. I mean, he comes off very likable, I think. In other words, there's not. I didn't detect any kind of the cameras are on kind of fakeness or anything like that. And I kind of I admit I go through a lot of these guys I think could potentially be the first round pick and see how they interview and see if I could visualize them at a introductory press conference. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
To see if they're Steeler type, and I think he kind of passes the mustard there. Now, look, the thing about the whole tackling thing with Greedy, even at Oregon, said, I think as recent as the LSU Pro Day, yeah, he needs to get better there. And he thinks, but Oregon says, I think he will. Now, what is Oregon supposed to say? Well, he needs work in tackling, and I think what you see is what you're going to get.
Well, he's being honest about needing work in tackling, so I
right. And I appreciate that because that part is in there, and I think you pulling up that quote, that could be a key in the Steelers not potentially going for a guy that they normally would. Now, on the flip side, Artie Burns sure got thrown out of the club quite a bit on his college tape. Okay?
Yeah.
Now
but I don't compare Greedy to Artie in a lot of ways. I think
right. I'm just saying that Artie was, Artie wasn't scared of contact. He wasn't very good at it.
And he's not been in the NFL either. But Artie's failures have nothing to do with contact or tackling.
Right. Now Greedy is a confident guy, so you have the confidence there. He's obviously played and started more games than a Brian Murphy. He's more of a man guy there, so that's good there. So, look, I definitely don't. And they were at the pro day. There's a video floating around that looks like, boy, if only my wife looked at me the way Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin looked at Greedy Williams during that pro day workout there, right?
It's your wife. I don't know.
But I get it. Now, my only question would be the whole: is he going to be there? Because quite honestly, in my opinion, personally, I think Greedy is the best corner on top of this draft class because of everything that he offers. Height, weight, speed, scheme, all like that. I think he is the best pound for pound corner in this draft.
Just fair.
Right?
Fair. But I think you can use Tomlin's answer about the receivers, apply it to corner. I think the cornerback rankings are all over the map. I don't think there's a consensus guy. I think that you could see it go in a million different directions, and I don't think a corner is going to go particularly high. I don't think you're going to see – I think Greedy's ceiling might be like 15-ish. So I think it's very possible he sits at 20, especially if Murphy or Baker or Rocky Sin jump ahead of him, which is possible.
Rock, I just don't get it. I mean,
I know, but that's the projection.
I know.
And the Steelers could draft Rocky Sin. Who knows? We haven't talked about him too much.
There's two of the latest major media guys, Peter King and Albert Breer, both have Rocky Sin, claiming they love him. But Peter King lists Rocky Sin at 6'1" or 6'2".
Yeah, check that height, my man.
But I guess my only qualm, and when you see my final mock, and I'm going to change this 4 more times before it actually gets down on paper, you're going to probably have a qualm with me as well, too. That's something we're going to talk about here in a little bit anyway. But my only thing is, man, if a corner comes off the board in the first 19 picks, I think it's going to be Greedy. So that's the only thing there. I'm not gonna peg you for anything else with the pick though, because I think that it's good. I think you make great points of why he could be the guy, and really it'd be interesting if it winds up being the guy to see if they got this thing any better. You know, it will be an interesting thing to see Greedy play some special teams right out of the chute. something really that I don't think he's got a lot of experience doing. But I mean, with that speed and that height and all like that, he's a guy that should be able to fly on the outside as a gunner. That kind of stuff.
Two quick thoughts. Check out the feature piece I linked in my mock draft about Greedy Williams, about his backstory. I think it's really valuable to learn about that. Single mom raised him. A couple kids in the family. His brother plays for Oklahoma State, Rodarius. They moved around from house to house. They were very poor. His mom did remarry, I think, when he was 14, and it became his stepdad became his football coach for youth football. But a guy that wants to give back, has given back to his family already, wants to do this for his mom. Greedy has a 2-year-old daughter right now, so I think everything points to him being a good guy who wants to succeed in the NFL, to give back for his family, and isn't the guy that's gonna rest on his laurels. He wants that big money contract. I think he's gonna play like it. And then I just want to read that quote again from Colbert that talked about this was the deciding factor for me of why I went Greedy Williams, talking about needing to adapt and evolve. Colbert did, and finding a different type of guy. And this is back from around the combine. Colbert says, quote, "Our game has always been about getting physical players who can come off the edge and close off the edge and make a tackle. But are they doing that at the expense of not making plays in the football? We have to maybe try to find that balance and maybe be more open to the concept that the game is constantly changing. And if you want playmakers in the back end, then find someone who has done it." Williams has 8 picks in 2 years, 6 as a freshman in SEC play. That did it for me. That's why I went Greedy Williams.
Yeah, and I definitely understand. I mean, if Greedy goes earlier, I don't fault you for that, because I think you make great arguments of why he might potentially be there and why he could be the pick. And look, I mean, if he is on the board, that's going to be tough to run away from.
Yep. For 52, I went with a guy I don't think I've mocked yet, but it's certainly one that's been in a lot of other Steelers mock drafts. Chase Winovich from Michigan. Talk about TJ Watt 2.0. I mean, I don't know if he's got that type of ceiling or that type of athlete, but I mean, just kind of feels like the same dude. High effort, high character, Big Ten players, played tight end even. He got moved to tight end early in his Michigan career. I think one of the best effort and motor guys, fanatical effort he shows on tape from snap to snap. I mean, the ceiling might be a little limited, but I think that they clearly like this guy. They like his attitude. I think this guy makes sense and can play significant snaps right away.
Boy, if you look at one player that looks like a Steeler, it's him. We've talked about him throughout most of the process. I'm gonna nickname him Tinsel. If the Steelers draft him, other than age, why wouldn't you? I mean, other than age, why wouldn't you? Now, some will say, well, his production was mostly a result of Rashawn Gary and others there. Look, I think you look at some of the TFLs this guy had, tackles for losses, and in the spread offense world anyway, with the ball out so quick in some of these games, Michigan, I think, kind of get out boat racing some other teams as well too. There's some quarterbacks have to get that ball out. So I mean, some might say, well, his sack total's a little bit low. Look, he can still bend. Look at his spark score, right? I mean,
his streak cone was 6.94.
I mean,
great time.
The guy for his build and all like that, and I guess another knock would be, he played with his hand in the dirt all the time. Well, so did Lamar Woodley, And if you're gonna knock a guy like Cleveland Farrell for not standing up much, I
think you're going the wrong way.
I'm going the wrong way there. I mean, if you're gonna knock a guy like Winovich for not standing up much, then you damn sure can't knock Cleveland Farrell on that. I mean, this is a guy that I think probably has gone through the paces throughout the workout off-season, pre-draft workout process is showing that maybe he can turn and drop. And in today's NFL anyway, how much are you going to ask? I mean, especially with the Steelers, how much are you going to actually ask the guy to do that? I mean, if you want a corner, draft a corner, right?
Yep. They dropped about 17 to 20% of the time last year. They're coached by the D-line coach. The schemes are blurred. He's been working on dropping. It's fine. Their zone drops. They're fine. They're not that hard to do.
The guy can use his hands.
Yep.
And when you go back to what Kevin Colbert said, one of the big things that drew them to, I think, TJ Watt, who really didn't have great overall sack numbers, at least high quality sack numbers coming out of Wisconsin. Winovich's sack rule, I think, looks a little bit better than Watts does. And if you go back to one of the things Kevin Colbert said about Watt coming out of Wisconsin, about that hand usage, just impressed with his hands. I think you really could say the same thing about Winovich in there as well too. And look, you only have a second-round draft pick drafted in there. Nothing says next year that you can't address, edge in the first, second, third round again. But make no mistake about it, they've got to address edge in this draft, right?
I mean, I would think so, but also I've had ideas where they won't because they signed Chick and they have a Denier and they have other needs. I don't know. I mean, I think it could go either way, but Winovich made the most sense. It's hard to find that inside linebacker or that safety at 52. I mean, I would love, if they had shown more interest in Juan Thornhill or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson or Taylor Rapp. I mean, that would have made a lot of sense, but the fit just wasn't quite there. So maybe Deontay Thompson, that's probably a name to keep in mind at 52. But to go through the rest of day two, just speed through these next two picks. We've talked about him so much. 66 overall, Miles Boykin from Notre Dame. I think he could go as high as 52 for Pittsburgh. I think 66 for me will be his floor based on media reports. Ex-receiver, big playmaker. By midseason, he could make an impact. A big fan of Miles Boykin. Then 83, I also want David Long Jr. I think the third round is fine for him. I think he's considered a late day 2, early day 3 guy. And I think when you want to get your inside linebacker, if there aren't a ton out there, the class isn't super strong. Of the guys they've shown interest in, I think he fits. And as you said, kind of that, boom or bust, feast or famine kind of dude that doesn't have to play right away, which is probably good news for him.
Yeah, like I said, would people know my thoughts on Long Jr. and Miles Boykin at this point? I mean, definitely going to be fun to watch wherever those two, because we've talked so much about them during the pre-draft process. Even if they don't land with the Steelers, it'd be interesting to watch their career progress moving forward. I mean, Miles Boykin, a sparky dude.
Mm-hmm.
Just very, very inexperienced there. I think you at least can, with him, you can get him on the field for some special team stuff. You got that kind of that hole, if you will, from DHB. Probably not going to be back, and obviously Justin Hunter's not back, and he wasn't special teams asset at all. So at least when Miles Boykin, in the meantime, and you can probably even dress him and get him on the field as a special teams player while you try to work him in eventually, to learn behind Dante Moncrief. So. Other than not just being a one-year producer at Notre Dame, that's it. That's the only knock really you can find on him.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, just everything that comes with the inexperience. But I think you put him with a good quarterback. He played with such poor quarterback play at Notre Dame. I think he's going to be a much better player. For round 4, 122, Foster Moreau, tight end from LSU. I think, again, a guy that feels like a Steeler. I thought about Washington with Drew Sample, but I go with Moreau. Just a good leader, good character guy. The interest is obvious, brought in for a pre-draft visit, so I'm pretty sure there's no surprise, no big debate there. Here's the one I really liked, and I thought this was a little bit low, and the thing I don't like about my mock is waiting this long for that dime player, because that is going to be such a critical role and position in 2019, but I think you want a sleeper name that could even go as high as the third round. Wouldn't I think it's within the realm of possibility. Sheldrick Redwine from Miami. This is a guy that reminds me a lot of Sean Davis. He's a super sparky dude who ran 4.44, 39-inch vert, 10.10 in the broad, really an elite tester that came to school as a corner, got moved to safety, played all over, can create turnovers, smart, good starting experience. Tom Bradley at his pro day. You want a name beyond the Darnell Savages and the Juan Thornhills of the world? I'm looking at Sheldrick Redwine as being a guy on their radar.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched the proverbial three games. I haven't dealt spent a lot of time diving too terribly deep into him. Where all did he line up?
Everywhere. You name a spot, he did it.
Okay, that's an interesting aspect with him, because the Steelers love the more versatility they can have, especially with these defensive backs and safeties, the better. And all, like I said, I've just did the basic 3 games with him cut up. That's on the YouTube machine there. But interesting name, look, you make good arguments. Sparky, Tom Bradley there, can take the football away. Has experience.
And I think he could go higher than this. I think the 5th is where he's projected to go. I think he could go higher with the way the Steelers draft these guys. I'll read through the rest of my draft and get your temperature on them. The 6th round, 175, name I've talked about before. I won't go into details again too much. But Benny Snell from Kentucky, kind of shooting my shot here for a running back that was not brought in for a visit, but Eddie Faulkner at the Wildcats Pro Day. I think Snell is what they're looking for to a T. I might go in a different direction with a different type of back, but big back, powerful character, bloodlines, production, he's got it all. So 6th round, I think, is a good fit for him. Again, going Matt Gay, the kicker, as Daniel did for 192 in the 6th round. I think the top kicker, big leg, best football still ahead of him, kicked in bad weather. Art Rooney sent the mandate. Figure out this kicker situation. I don't think they're going to spend a UDFA on it. I think it's a really good chance they do take a kicker if they're able to. And then for the final 2 picks, to go with the final pre-draft visitor, I had 3 on this list. You go Amadi. Said this the other day, Dave. Just a guy that I have a gut feeling will be a Steeler. Like Greedy Williams, you're looking for playmakers. You're looking for guys that might not be the best tacklers or have the biggest frame, but guys that can make plays on the ball when it's in the air. That's Amadi's best trait. 51 career games, picked off 9 passes, a little bit of punt return value. Can play free safety, nickel corner. That versatility, I think, is going to be something valuable for him. Then the final pick, kind of going, you got to pick one kind of dude that no one talks about at all, just kind of throwing one out there. I went with a small school guy to kind of check that box too. Trevin Tate from Memphis, a non-Power 5 guy. A guy that reminds me a bit of Kelvin Beachum. I mentioned this the other day. Good starting experience, played tackle in college. Going to kick inside in the NFL, maybe guard, possibly center. We know the Memphis connection, Randy Fiedner at their pro day. So just to kind of give you the additional offensive line depth along the interior.
Does he have a build like Kevin Beachum? Kevin Beachum was kind of that's what's that half horse, half man, senator or whatnot.
Okay. I don't know how to describe.
Kelvin Beachum had one of those real kind of unique. He had like the lower half of his lower half was kind of built like a tackle, and his top half was built like a guard. Mm-hmm. He had a real unique. Plus, he had a real unique build to him. That's one thing I always remember about Kelvin Beachum coming out of SMU was kind of the looked like the top half didn't belong with the bottom half.
Well, I think they have some similar measurables. Let me try to get Tate's arm length here. Tate is listed. He was at the combine, so that's really important. He is, pull up the right mock, 6'2 and a half, 293. Beachum was 6'2", 303. So I think there's some similarities there. Let me get his arm length because I am curious. I didn't look that up actually.
I just think the visual looking at
sure.
Beachum had the different build, not necessarily the measurable.
Actual
measurable.
You'd have to look at him. I don't know how to respond to that. You describing him, but 32 and 3/8 inch arm. I'm sure he's gonna kick inside to the next level. But I think the versatility is nice. Maybe some off the field concerns. Got arrested in 2015, but it's a 7th round pick. Coming back to the school, everything was fine after that. I think that's a solid pick.
All right, and Randy Fiedner definitely we know he was at the pro day, so that's going to help his cause right there. I was going to ask you real quick, Alex Burns, what do you remember about the K-State pro day? I know, was it Brandon? Who was? I know somebody. I remember seeing somebody. I think in the Steelers sweatshirt or something there. Do you remember who was at the K-State pro day?
I don't believe I had a name listed. I can pull up the tracker though. Barnes isn't the guy they showed interest in, but he checks all those boxes. What they look for study. He hit everything, and tough dude. Dad played college football, so Mike Butler was at Kansas State. So area scout Mike Butler.
Okay, he is a guy that definitely fits. It just they haven't. Was he? I'm trying to remember. Was he a senior? Was he was he?
I think he was.
Yeah, he's not an underclassman, is he?
I don't think so. Let me look. No, he's an underclassman. I'm sorry. Yep.
Okay, he is an underclassman, so that would explain him not being. And look, if you're going to put an underclassman, what'd you think about my mock draft guide?
That was excellent. Yeah, I mean that's not that that's a sale end all, but that's the best you're gonna find in trying to construct your mock draft. And I think I follow most of those rules, quote unquote rules.
Right. Now the thing is, if you're going to put an underclassman in your mock draft after round 3, a good bet it's probably going to be a skill position like a running back or a wide receiver or maybe an offensive lineman. I wouldn't go heavy and put an underclassman in a mock after the 3rd round.
Yeah, I think I have one underclassman after that. It's Benny Snell, but a running back, and that's where you're getting most of your underclassmen from. So that works out.
All right, good job. I mean, did you want to delete it immediately after you published it or no?
Oh, before and after and during and right now, yeah. I mean, it was really close with Williams and Savage. I think Savage makes a lot of sense. Maybe that segues well into our last topic we can touch on briefly about, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but Darnell Savage at 20. I think it's a really serious possibility right now.
I think you have to consider it considering all the buzz that's out there. I mean, obviously, through most of this process, Savage has not been a guy that a lot of people have been linking as a top 30 player.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been a couple of reports this last week, and once again, we don't know. I mean, but look, if you look at him as a person and a player, it makes sense. I mean, it really does make sense. Now, connecting the dots between him and the Steelers in the first round pick based on the quote unquote guide that I put up, he misses a few things. Obviously he's not an underclassman, right?
But I think he's only 21.
Right, he is. He's not yet 22.
So that age is the only thing I care about. They draft underclassmen because they're younger. So he's a senior that's still a young dude. That's awesome for him.
Right, and it's not like they haven't drafted. I mean, they have drafted seniors in the top 20 before. You know, it's just rare. Troy Polamalu was one. Who did I know was the other one?
Oh, it was in Bud and Cam. I don't know where they were selected at. Bud was Bud 20?
Wasn't Bud an underclassman or no?
I thought Bud was a senior. Maybe I'm wrong.
I know it was Troy and somebody else.
Well, Cam, I'm pretty sure Cam was a senior. He wasn't drafted.
No. Casey Hampton.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So I know Troy. Was Bud a senior?
Yes, he returned. Yeah, but he's a senior. Yeah, he was senior, pick 22.
Okay. But anyway, what I'm talking about top 20.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know I don't know how much of a difference.
All right. Well,
they drafted seniors. It's possible. Sure.
Right. Okay. Team captain.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely sparky. Has a spark when it comes to that. Has the experience at the games played and the games started. You want to talk about position versatile guy? Played corner. Played in the slot, played both safety spots, and played down in the slot. Just if you go back and listen to some of the comments he's made prior to seasons about having to move, to this position or that position, no qualms with it whatsoever. I'll do it for the team, whatever the team needs. I just want to win, blah blah blah. And he played all over the place well too. In fact, probably free safeties probably is not as best of the three. This is a guy, if I draft him that early anyway, I'm putting him down in the box. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about a dime player? That's it. I mean, he's the guy. Okay. Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin weren't at his. Everybody, this is the portion of the podcast where I'm going to need you to push pause and get your tinfoil helmets out here, put them on, and strapped on pretty tight here. Okay, the whole Kevin Colbert at the pro day, Mike Tomlin not at the pro day, at the Maryland pro day, at least that we know of. I don't think Kevin Colbert can be in two places at one time, by the way, anyway.
He was at Texas, right?
You did have the league meetings going on that day, okay? No way Mike Tomlin was going to be in Maryland being part of the competition committee and all the stuff going on in the league meetings that week.
Which is in Arizona, by the way. So
which is in Arizona. There was absolutely no way that was going to happen. That was a conflict of interest. Boom. No way. Mm-hmm. Kevin Colbert, who could sneak out probably that way. Now, when you think about that pro day was early that morning, I think 8 a.m. the Maryland pro day was, and you think of all the things back in Arizona, you think of maybe just the logistics of trying to get there in time. Could he have taken the Rooney plane or what have you? You just don't know. But you could come up with good enough reasons why it would have been tough for Kevin Colbert to make that pro day.
He was doing his Texas circuit. He was doing Texas A&M, Texas, and Houston.
And so maybe because it was, and look, maybe he had travel plans and they fell through, and he rented a car
I mean, I think we're getting into
But I mean,
the
Texas is closer to Arizona than.
Yeah, I just think he figured. Well, one, those schools had more prospects. Colbert goes to places that have a lot of prospects, and two, I just thought his schedule's probably okay. There's these 3 schools; they have a lot of talent. There's guys worth checking out. They're all right close to each other. I don't have to go all over the place to try to make it work, so I'll just hit up these 3 schools and send Brandon Hunt to Maryland.
All right, and not only that, they saw him they met with him at the combine.
Mm-hmm. And real quick, sorry to interrupt you. Brandon Hunt's a high-ranking member. This isn't an area scout. This is the pro scouting coordinator, someone that has a lot of push. And they brought in 2 Maryland guys after the fact. So Brandon Hunt being there is notable.
They met with him at the Senior Bowl. Okay.
Did they? Okay, I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, they meet with everybody at the Senior Bowl. They were at the Senior Bowl. Savage was at the Senior Bowl.
Okay. Well, okay. I didn't know. I thought there was a report that said they met with him.
No, I mean, they meet. Every team meets with every prospect. It might just be a position coach or whatnot, but they talk to every player there.
Okay.
All right. He was a practice player for the secondary of the week at the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean the kid is flawed. Character's off the charts with this kid. All right, so we've excused why Colbert wasn't at the pro day and why Tomlin wasn't at the pro day, and for good measure, they brought him in probably just to stare at him.
Yeah, him being brought in for a visit, that puts him in play. No doubt about it.
Now, I'm going against a few of my own rules and trying to fit my own narrative here, but I mean, look, at that point in the process, I mean, you know enough about the kid. Why are you going to bring him in for a damn pre-draft visit anyway, other than just maybe measure him? You know, and stare at him and gawk at him. I'm being funny here, obviously, but look, I mean, to me, I think even bringing him in for a pre-draft visit is overkill at that point, because I kind of think. And here's one other. You want to play connect the dots?
I think this is my favorite one. You're doing some real Dave Bryan deep cuts here.
I told you,
blew my mind.
You better have your tinfoil hat on here. Mike Tomlin, his son Dino, committed to Maryland recently. So if there's probably been some conversations going on. With now, obviously the Maryland had that coach that was suspended or whatnot. But who was the intern coach there at Maryland?
Matt Canada.
Where is Matt Canada from?
So he was Pitt offensive coordinator for 2017. Yeah.
You think Mike Tomlin and Matt Canada hadn't had some conversations?
Yeah. Oh my God, Dave! Can I change my mock right now?
No.
Yeah.
But I mean look, and if you throw that all in with, and look, obviously Savage is a guy now for a couple weeks. We've been saying, can this guy get in there? Can this guy get in there? If you ever if you ever wanted for there to be a quote unquote reach this year, it would be Darnell Savage, right?
Yeah. And I don't believe he's a reach.
All right, so that everybody can now safely, I think, remove their tinfoil helmets. But I mean, you can make a good argument with keeping rules in place, mock draft rules in place as to why Darnell Savage could be the pick.
Oh yeah, I don't think he really breaks any rules.
And he is a guy that you could potentially get on the field fairly quick. You could damn sure going to have him out there for special teams out of the chute there. So, I mean, I really think, I mean, you want to talk about hearts and smarts. You want to talk about a guy that could potentially we'd be saying, well, look, I mean, we know why they went that way, hearts and smarts. It's Darnell Savage. All right, so now will I have him in my final mock? I don't know. I'm still playing with it. But 1 minute I think that's a slam dunk. I'm going to write it up that way. The next minute I think something else. Now let me go another direction here with you with the whole Devin Bush thing. All right. Mm-hmm. How many teams do you think? Look, people should know my thoughts on Devin Bush by now. If you missed the great episode Alex and I had with the debate about Devin Bush, you really should probably go back and listen to that. The athleticism is there on tape with Devin Bush. My only concern is the whole measurable aspect with him, with the whole height issue. And what did you think about the comparisons I put up this past week about him and Ernie Sims? I mean,
it was really good.
Boy, you want to talk about the new Ernie Sims of a player drafted top 10 matches and measurables, and really, the whole backstory. The father played football at Florida State. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between these two guys. And while Ernie Sims wasn't an impactful player, the thing is, too, you go back and look at even the college stats the two of those had. They're very, very similar there. Now, Ernie Sims, when he got into the NFL, he played, 9 years or what have you. He didn't put up a lot of, other than tackles, total tackles. I mean, he had a lot of total tackles in the league. He didn't do much outside of that. But he damn sure for first 3 years in the league, Ernie Sims, he was a tackling machine. I think there was only like 3 players who had more tackles than Sims did in the league during the first 3 years in the league. It probably would have carried over into year 4, but I think Ernie Sims had a shoulder injury that sidelined him numerous games there. After his 4th year, he was obviously traded to Philadelphia Eagles there. Back to Bush. Just the height, and the way he kind of gets blocked out on some plays there bothers me, and just goes back to my statistical stat sheet concerns. The fantasy aspect of him as a college player still bothers me to some degree there. But there's no doubt that this guy is going to be a first-round player. Now, how many teams does he have to get past before a free fall to 20 or a free fall to 16, somewhere where the Steelers might trade up for him happen? How many teams does he have to get past? I would think Tampa Bay, obviously, but you could argue that Tampa's more going to be in line and play for Devin White, okay? Mm-hmm. So are we talking basically the run of Denver, Cincinnati?
Yes. Yeah, let me flip the draft order. If he gets past 11 at Cincinnati, then I think he becomes very much in play for a trade-up candidate for Pittsburgh. Now, will he get past 10 and 11? Big question. I really have a tough time envisioning Cincinnati passing on Devin Bush unless someone falls, like let's say maybe an Ed Oliver or someone like that. But if he gets past, like I said, once he gets we'll say 12 for the Green Bay, then Steelers are in play to trade up.
When you're talking about, do you view Devin Bush as a top 10 or 11 player in this year's draft?
Well, are you asking would I trade up? Or are you asking are they going?
No, I'm not asking a trade up question here. I'm asking you: do you consider Devin Bush one of this year's top 10 or 11 players in this draft class?
I don't know. I mean, I'm including quarterbacks and positions of non-need in here too.
Yeah, I'm talking.
Yeah, maybe he's probably around a top 10 guy. I don't have a number for you. I don't have a big board to rank it, but he's probably a top 10 guy. And in terms of positions of need and feasibility, I mean, he's a top 5 guy, top 3 guy.
When you talk about guys that have been consistently mocked in the top, let's say 13 picks throughout this offseason, I know you're not sitting there looking at it with a list or whatnot. But which guy in that group has the less triggers needed to drop? And I think it's Bush. Because, hear me out, if Tampa does not, and I know it's a big if, but I mean, we basically have Devin White tied to one team throughout this whole process. Not multiple teams, but one. And I know you could probably say, Dave, you could go through several players and really only tie them to one team. I don't think that's I think when you're talking about inside linebackers sometimes, especially when a guy in the top 5, what I'm getting at here is what if Tampa goes somewhere other than Devin White?
Well, I don't know. Possible, but I don't know what you're getting at. Does that mean you're saying Bush is going to fall because White's going to go lower and Bush is going to get pushed down?
Right. I think if Devin White pushes down to look, Denver, I think is kind of a wild card in here. I mean, Denver could go 8 or 9 different directions and probably nobody be concerned here. Fangio being a defensive-minded coach. Devin White sure would look good in a Denver Bronco uniform.
Do you think Devin White goes before Cincinnati?
Yeah, I think it's. I wouldn't bet my house on it, but I mean, I'd be inclined to bet that. Yes.
Okay, I believe so too, and that includes Tampa. I'm not even saying Tampa passes on him, but just does Devin White period go top 10? I believe yes. Cincinnati at 11. their linebacking core was terrible. It was the worst in football last year. And maybe there's a more attractive option there. I'm not pretending like I follow Cincinnati in depth here, but if Devin Bush is there, he's a really hard guy for them to pass up.
Okay. Well, I mean,
but if he gets past them,
that's my whole thing. Is there's less. I think there's less ifs and thens and buts. Less triggers to cause a Bush fall. And if he falls out of that top 10, you could realistically see him go down to 16 or lower.
Yeah, no, I think it's possible. I think it's definitely once you get into the teens, the Steelers could trade up or start making a move. But I will say one final thing, and I know these are different positions, but as we've gotten real close to the draft, we're hearing some guys that may fall for medical reasons, which always happens. Montez Sweat, you're right. I said I was wrong the other day when I said the medical is not a concern. It sounds like it is a concern about that heart condition that could cause him to drop. A report came out today about his teammate Rashawn Gary with a shoulder or a labrum issue that may drop him significantly in the first round, maybe out of the first round. So you're seeing some of those top names we thought were going to be top 10, top 15 guys that are now falling out. That's just going to push Bush up more as being one of the top talent and value guys in the top 20 picks.
Right, but only to a certain amount of teams, though, I think.
But most teams can use their linebacker that runs 4-4-3.
Okay. But there's always the surprise every year about the quarterbacks.
Sure.
Look, Cincinnati could if Cincinnati likes one of those quarterbacks, what about if Haskins is there?
Yeah, I mean Cincinnati could go in other directions. I don't know how they're going to play it with Zach Taylor. We don't know the history, obviously. But like I said, 11, as I said earlier, 11's a choke point for Devin Bush. If Devin Bush gets past 11, Pittsburgh's strongly in play. That's the spot you want to watch. 10 and 11, Denver, Cincinnati for Devin Bush.
If their new head coach wants to untie his wagon from Andy Dalton sooner rather than later, then he really should do it in this draft, right? Because you want your backup quarterback to hopefully sit a year, right? Andy Dalton's cuttable now from a guaranteed money standpoint, but obviously you're not going to do that. But next year, I think Andy Dalton's final year is the final year of his contract. It would make even more sense to cut Andy Dalton next offseason, and then turn it over to your quarterback at that point. Odds are you're not going to get a good starting quarterback or potential franchise quarterback after round 1 this year. Yada yada, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how he feels about these quarterbacks. It's not the strongest quarterback group. I mean, could he take one? Yeah, I don't know how they feel about the quarterback situation, but Bush is going to be probably near the top of their board.
Sure, but if Bush makes it past the Bengals,
yeah, that's what I said. 11's the name to watch. And
would you hate me for putting Bush in at 20 for the Steelers?
I mean, I wouldn't hate you. I just don't think it's the most realistic thing because eventually someone's going to have him at the top of their board, just on a value.
Well, you have the most athletic. You have, in my view, who would be the top cornerback in this year's draft going at 20 overall.
Well, I mean, look what not that he's a sale end, but Mel Kiper. Well, first, we don't know whether Greedy's the top quarter. Like you don't know who the top cornerbacks are. They're all over the map. It's not, Devin White and Devin Bush are top 2, and there's no argument about that, right?
Right.
The cornerback is all over the place, right? There's no singular. Well, Greedy's the top guy. I mean, you've seen every name under the sun being mocked in the first round. I've seen Greedy at 15. I've seen him at 17. I've seen him in the 20s. So it's not as clean cut that way. And Mel Kiper even said yesterday he doesn't believe the first corner's coming off the board until 20 at Pittsburgh. So it's not like Greedy is getting mocked at 7. I'm putting him at 20. Greedy's generally mocked in the 15 to 25 range, and I'm putting him at 20. I think that's reasonable.
If Bush made it in range, would the Steelers be all over him? You think?
What do you mean in range?
Move up. If he fell to 16.
Yeah, and I have an article coming up that talks about one brief trade-up scenario because I don't want to get in the weeds with it. But like I said, once he gets past 11, Colbert could trade up with Green Bay at 12 for all I know. I mean, gets past 11, Steelers are making their move because the price won't be as expensive, and I think they can. I think they'll try to get their guy.
I think I guess the premise of my whole thing there is where I am. I don't want to double up on some of these mocks. I mean, it's no fun for everybody to read us all having the same guy start off the mock. But I mean, I'm torn between Bush and Savage right now. I mean, both of them are extremes, right? I mean, one is a reach of a player falling, and the other one's a reach of a player that many people don't have in the first round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, like I said, Devin Bush is our number one guy. I mean, I would consider mocking Bush at 20 only to say that I think they're going to trade up for him, and that's how I'm going to do it. But
let me ask you with Savage. Okay, let's say for some, and here we are getting into the hypotheticals, which I hate. But real quick, Bush, you get Bush in the first round without trading up. He falls in your lap at 20. All right, at second, how far would you have to maybe go up into to second to get Savage?
Top 40 minimum. So you're going from 52 to at least 40.
And that's feasible, right? With a
yes, but that's on the low end of things. I think it could be 30, it could be 35, but 40 is the minimum. Is the lowest you have to go up to get him.
What's more likely to happen, Bush being a Steeler or Savage being a Steeler?
Ooh, very good question. I'd say Bush just because I think we clearly know that they love him and that he's the number one guy that's on their board.
Do we know that they love him though?
I haven't talked to Kevin Colbert about it, but every other sign indicates that, sending the house at his pro day, the reports that they love him, the interest. Yes, I think I can say with confidence that they really, really like him.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Who would you say with Bush or Savage? Because that's interesting.
Look, I mean, we'll find out on my mock draft, right? Because that's the way I think that they have the best chance of going. Here we are on a few days away from the draft, and we don't know who the first round draft pick's going to be.
Yeah.
We have our ideas of who about. Look, Greedy, you make a strong argument for him. Bush, if he's there, strong argument for him there. Farrell, possible. Savage, possible. Murphy, I know to me he's kind of an outlier still, but I mean, there's 5 names right there, and it's really hard to see it not being. And look, you want to throw Winovich into it for good measure? Possible. I guess. I mean, so there's 1 of 6 guys, and it just depends on how this first round breaks. I think has a lot to do with it. But if they all right. Here's part 2. Bush is gone. White's gone. Hawkinson's gone. Your boy Greedy's gone. Who's your pick? Is it Murphy or is it Savage?
Savage. That's how I ranked it. Greedy, Savage, Farrell, Murphy. That's what the 4 came. Those are my final 4, excluding Devin Bush, where I think is number 1, but just not going to happen at 20, in my opinion. So Greedy, Savage, Farrell, Murphy. That's how I ranked them. I
mean, Farrell with Sweat, depending on what happens with Sweat, it could cause Farrell for a team like maybe the Panthers would be a good fit for Farrell, A local kid, edge, Farrell could come up. Farrell could just as easy come off the board. I think Farrell has an easier chance of technically less teams having to make it past than say Bush, But because there's some teams, especially if you rule out Montez Sweat and all, from and Rashawn Gary, if you throw him out of the first round, which I think is a possibility there.
Good point.
So yeah, I mean, I think one of those names it could be it. All right, moving on. What else do we have to tackle here? You wanted to hit to the sleeper names?
Yeah, we're running out of time
though. How far are we into this
now? Really far. We got Reader. So let's get the sleepers. You can see the post. We mentioned those names. Savage was on that sleeper list, but he feels less of a sleeper now. Mentioned Justin Lane and Julian Love and Winovich and Jerry Tillery, but the names we've touched on before. I really feel like though it's come down to the names that we've talked about: Farrell, Savage, Greedy, Bush, Murphy, maybe Yasin. I just pretend that it's not going to be Yasin.
I can't.
I feel like teams do like him though because I love the wrestling background. They like his toughness, his tenacity. There's reason to like the dude. I just don't see a first round guy.
All right, that's a good segue. Derek Demi, and it's pronounced Derek Demi. Okay. David Alex, long time and daily listener, reader, first time email. I love the work you guys do. Who, in your opinion, are the 5 most likely players to call themselves Steelers after the conclusion of the draft any round? Thanks. Bush, Savage, Foster Moreau. Help me out.
Winovich.
Banagoo.
Yeah, Banagoo.
Banagoo has Steeler written. Boy, you go back and go listen to his. You want to talk about fun? Go listen to Banagoo's pro day interview. Steeler written all over him. Who else are guys that just scream?
I think Amadi. I felt really good about Amadi being a Steeler. I know it's a late round guy. It's tougher to project.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, Ugo, you mean?
Yeah, Ugo Amadi.
Okay,
yep.
Derek, I mean, look, there's a good 10 guys that David Seals. I mean, if there's a team that's going to draft him 4th or 5th round, it's the Steelers, in my opinion. Miles Boykin. I don't know how many are we up to? About 10 there. There's a lot. There's probably at least a good 10 that if they're drafted by the Steelers, when Alex and I are talking, we're going to say, yeah, that's a guy that we could definitely picture there. All right, Nate Hughes writes in, Dave and Alex, I really enjoy your work ahead of the first round. In light of Monday's press conference, I'd like to know which players, in what order do you think Steelers have on their first round will not trade away from in any reasonable circumstance list? I think Devin Bush obviously on that list. He says, which players would you have on the list and in what order if you were drafting from based on your preference? Look, here's the thing. I'll be very surprised if the Steelers trade out of 20 down. I think if they do anything this year, it's going to be a move up.
Yep, I agree. Either moving up or staying put, not trading down.
It would have to be significant for them to trade down, I think. I guess in short, I'm not expecting them to move at all. But all right, Alex, which player are you not? Which few players are you not trading away from? I mean, Bush is obviously one of them.
Yeah, Bush is there.
Greedy.
Bush might be the only guy that I would, as soon as teams would call, I would say, no, we're not even listening to it. Other teams, I might listen. I probably wouldn't trade or move. But Bush is probably the only guy that I would just not answer the phone.
He says, for what it's worth, one aspect of the draft I think is being understandably under-discussed is the potential to trade up in the second or later round. Look, I mean, if they're going – I think if there's any move that the Steelers make this year, it is moving up in the second or third round. And I think Kevin Colbert even talked about there being a nice selection of players in the second and third round this year. So – I would find them more likely to trade up in round 2 or round 3 with that draft capital that they have as opposed to round 1.
Yep, and it's cheaper to do so, which is always nice.
Shookman, Rodney, becoming a regular email here. I got a feeling from the presser yesterday that Colbert Tomlin want to trade back. Did Yins get that vibe? No. I did not. If Bush is gone, is Greedy that much better than a second-round cornerback? Grab another second or third, or both in trade. A lot of really good second, third round, fourth-round talent to be had. Love you guys, Rod. I didn't get the sense of anything that Kevin Colbert said that more likely to trade down.
Here's the other thing to consider. I mean, put aside what the Steelers want to do. Who wants to trade up in this class? I mean, is a quarterback going to be there at 20? Probably not. And we know that there's better depth in this class than there is elite talent. So what elite talent are teams looking to trade up for that's going to compel this team to come down? You got to have both sides of it. The Steelers might want to trade down, but are they going to get enough offers or a good enough offer to do so? Is someone going to feel that strongly about wanting to come up at 20? And I don't know what that team's going to be and what player that's going to be. So I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think it'd have to be a quarterback if you're going to go into that 20, come up to that 20 spot. I would think it would be a quarterback.
I mean, it could be, Marcus Davenport. The Saints traded up for him last year, but so there's always possibility. But I don't. Everyone knows that the depth here is strong for that. So why would they want to move up to get another guy that's probably close on the board to the second round guy, and give up all that draft capital in the process?
All right, Bill Adams. Bill Adams writes in, hey, guys, absolutely love the podcast and website. Great work. Quick question. I listen to every podcast rapidly. That means intensely, Dave. I have heard you guys mention Zach Gentry. I have not heard you guys mention Zach Gentry as a tight end prospect. Steelers may draft in the later rounds. Any thoughts on him? Yeah, I got to be honest. I haven't watched much tape on Zach.
Daniel mentioned him in his mock draft. I think I had him in others considered on an early edition of my mock, but you're looking at kind of a pure blocking type, kind of a Matt Spaeth-ish without the third round price tag on him, thank God. So probably a little, maybe a UDFA if he slips, but I don't think that's your guy because athletically as a receiver, you're not going to get much, and those blocking guys are dime a dozen. But look out for Zach Gentry as a UDFA, Kendall Blanton, and Matt Sokol from Michigan State. Blanton's from Missouri as names that could be UDFA tight ends.
Jose Huerta writes in, love the show, guys. So crazy question here, and I'm not exactly sure if it's legal in the NFL, but let's assume that it is. Would you trade Bud Dupree and next year's 4th round pick for Wade Phillips, the defensive coordinator? The Rams would be out. Yeah, I don't think it's.
John Gruden got traded for a pick, right? So I think it's probably theoretically possible. But
the Rams would be absolutely silly to trade for Bud Dupree, a guy under a 1-year contract, next year's 4th round pick for Wade Phillips to DC. I just see the way he shuts down Tom Brady every time, plays against him, and he's great with a 3-4 defense. No. Eric Stevenson writes in, Eric from Redding, California. Hey guys, love the show, especially this time of year. For those of us holding out hope for Devin Bush, how do you guys see the draft needing to break for that to happen? It's funny how we answer some of these things that end up being questioned here. Also, I'm nervous that it's so obvious who the Steelers want that we are in jeopardy of being jumped by teams like Baltimore is a reason enough to trade up even a few. Look, you know our thoughts on what it's probably going to take for Devin Bush to drop. I don't see why people get nervous about anything considering the draft. It's something that you have zero control over it. I think
you're not going to be nervous, Dave. I'm going to be nervous.
Nah, I'm not. I'm just going to be nervous. I haven't so much immediately once they're on the clock being nervous that all right, here we go. We're going to have this next hour is full of work to do.
Next hour. It's going to be the next 3 days.
No, I mean, until the next picks made, we have certain things that we got to get done, on the side. No, my palms don't get sweaty anymore. I had the anticipation, who's it going to be, but I don't get nervous when it comes to that stuff. I mean, I don't get nervous about games or maybe it's I've done this so long I've become desensitized to certain things. I'm not worried about teams jumping up. I don't lose any sleep at night over that, Eric.
I get nervous just talking about it, so I don't know.
John Caldarelli writes in, first want to apologize to you, Dave, for addressing you as Brian. Look, they've called me Dave Brian all my life, so there's so many Daves in the family. That's how I was, Dave and Davey and Dave Brian. That was always how I was called during my life there.
And Dave, suspect probably a couple times in the police report somewhere.
And David when my mom's mad at me.
I get Alexander,
I mean, that's how nobody calls me David anymore except for my mom. And I haven't been called David since, since young kid, because it was always Davey because there's so many there. I had a cousin, David, and so many Davids in the family. Anyway, how dumb and embarrassing. I should have known, enjoyed reading articles on Steelers. David Fawn. Was fond of the old so sorry for the mistake. Won't happen again. My last email was too lengthy and analytical. You told me to watch the tape, so I did some revelations. Darnell Savage has honey badger traits, great instincts and anticipation, plays on his toes with athleticism, opportunistic strikes with pushback and wrap up, plays much larger than measured, could be a late first, early second round, look great in black and gold. I still love the power, size, and speed of Dexter Lawrence. Could see him playing nose and defensive tackle. Alex is correct that Clelin Ferrell and Nutter Tiger is a better fit for reps now, but love those big men. Wide receivers noticed Hakeem Butler is a beast at 6'5", 227 with 4.48 speed and 18 reps at 225. Breaks tackles and throws defenders aside. He's called the LeBron James of football. Wow, powerful stud team. Would fear love the upside of Miles Boykin. Blah, blah, blah. 1 year productivity, but stock rising. Could he last until early round? Third round? I think it's possible he lasts that long. There are a few of my favorites. Can you please comment on the tape of Hakeem Butler, who looks like a real stud?
Yeah, that's awesome information. That's a good comp on Savage, and I think I agree with what you're saying there.
Christian Perry, what is the plan with the safety group? Look, here's another interesting thing about the safeties. Who's your number 3 safety right now, Alex?
In my book or in the team's book? Because there are different answers.
Right. Yes.
Because, I mean, I get the interest in Rapp and Thornhill and Gardner. Maybe Gardner Johnson to be on the radar. Maybe Deontay Thompson. I like a lot of these guys. I like the safety class, but I also think Redwine could be that mid-round.
No, I mean, who's your third safety on the current Steelers roster right now?
God, Marcus Allen, I guess. I mean, yeah, the dime spot in the depth is poor, and those things have to be addressed.
And guess who's not signed past this year right now?
Sean Davis.
And there's no hint that he's going to be, we don't know what's going to happen with him. So do you want to go into next season with Terrell Edmonds and that's it? And potentially maybe a guy you get in the later round this year? So,
and that's why I said I'd probably take Savage over Greedy, because I think there's short and long-term value with playtime, and Greedy is a little tougher of a fit.
Right. I guess it sort of addresses what is the plan with the safety group. In my opinion, safety group is the weakest spot on the roster. It's one of the spots that needs to be addressed. I'll tell you that, Christian. Do they target or high in the draft? And so where and who? Look, if they do anything in the first round of safety, I think Alex and I both agree it's probably going to be Savage. It's a shame they didn't show more love to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and some of these other guys. Deontay Thompson from Alabama. Look, they were at Deontay Thompson's pro day, so I guess you can't completely rule him out in round 3 or 4 or whatever, second, third, fourth, somewhere around in there. John Fletcher writes, why MLB? And I don't think he's talking about Major League Baseball. What's up, guys? Listen every week. It gets me through my work. My question is, why MLB is our biggest need? I feel as though last year, where it counts, it was our secondary that really failed us the most when it mattered. I think end of game, Oakland, the stupid mistakes against Chargers. We got Mark Barron, who was in the Super Bowl last year. Clearly, he's an upgrade. Clearly, he's not the difference between Super Bowl or not. I feel like Byron Murphy is our best bet to help secondary. I would disagree with you there just because Byron Murphy's been playing a lot of zone. As I think his ball skills are better than Greedy, and then address free safety and maybe edge if we can get Winovich in round 2. I get it, but here's one of the things, go back to what Kevin Colbert said earlier this offseason. We didn't do a good enough job addressing the linebacker position with the Ryan Shazier injury, right?
Yep. Take it from what he said. He's absolutely right about it. Yeah, Mark Barron was on the Super Bowl team and got cut by a Super Bowl team too. And listen, we know that, if Devin Bush isn't the guy at 20, they can't get him. I don't think any of us are mocking a linebacker at 52. I mean, I have a linebacker going at 83. So it's not like we're saying linebacker is the top need and the reach for a guy, even if you don't get Devin Bush. I mean, there's options here. So it's not like we're saying linebacker has to go at 52 if you can't get him at 20. We're not saying that at all.
Boy, I sure hope they don't take that Alabama linebacker.
Mac Wilson. I think it's still possible. I had 52. I think it's possible.
You wake up in the middle of the night and I don't have much middle of the night sleep anyway, but something that'll wake me up in a cold sweat, maybe getting Mac Wilson in round 2. Now, round 3, well, maybe why not take a chance on him there? But, oh, man, I just can't. I don't know. Let's see. Brandon Serrano, you guys are doing a phenomenal job. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Brandon. I love Daniel V's mock draft. It seems like a deep dime backer safety class. I agree. It's kind of a deep. You talk about a guy like maybe Ugo, could do some things. Mahdi do some things for you later on. If you get him late, worst case scenario, can you rank your top 7 dime backer safety from this year's draft? Brandon, it's a little bit late in the show for us to do that, but I think we've hit on a lot of the names already here. One last one, Matt Carell, longtime listener, first-time emailer. I want to get him in because first-time emailer here. Hey, Dave and Alex, I love listening to the pod, reading the site for years, love the content. It's rock solid. I was intrigued by Alex's post today about sleeper picks for the first round. I was doing a mock draft online today, and both Devins, Greedy, Murphy, Baker, and Farrell were all on the board by 20. Wow. That's one of the things about using one of them simulators there, I guess. The players that dropped to them were Wilkins, the DT he's doing at both. Oh, they were all off the board.
Okay.
Devins, Greedy, Murphy, Baker, and Farrell were all off the board by 20. That's conceivable, maybe. The players that dropped to them were Wilkins, the defensive tackle from Clemson, and Dillard and Ford, offensive tackles. None of these guys were mentioned in Alex's post. Could you see the guys? Could you guys see the Steelers taking a defensive lineman or offensive lineman at 20? Man, I'd be shocked if it's an offensive lineman at 20. I'd be less shocked if it was a defensive lineman. But, man, do you really want a 340-pound player? Go, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very surprised on both, but to Lawrence's credit, this is a guy that had about 12 sacks in his career, 6.5 as a freshman, so he's been able to get after the quarterback. They're mostly cleanup stuff, but yeah, I just don't see the fit, the snap count. It just doesn't work for me that early.
Steve DeLuca, do you think Steelers built a roster more to win the division or win the AFC? Which would you aim for, and who would you draft to get it done? Yeah, I mean, I think you drafted. I mean, hopefully you're building a roster to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Look, you got to win the division first. So if you have to make some, I mean, if you got to look around and say, look, we're playing against some mobile quarterbacks, and look, you're never going to go wrong with speed, right?
Sure. Yeah, speed. Defend a lot, everything. Yeah, I mean, it's one and the same. You're drafting to beat AFC North. You're drafting to beat the AFC. You're drafting to win the Super Bowl. So I don't think it's dictating a whole heck of a lot.
The good thing is if you win the division, you're going to be in the playoffs. That's going to give you a chance to win the AFC. And if you win the AFC, then you have a chance to win the Super Bowl. So, yeah. Not too sure how to answer that one. All right, we're obviously run way long here, so we will go over my mock draft on Thursday. A couple other mock drafts on the side as well too. As you can see, we're not really sure where the Steelers going in the first round. We think we know 5 or 6 guys, but that's where we're at. Hope you enjoyed the discussion today. You can, in the meantime, follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com and hit that donate button upper right navigational bar. Or you want to donate and get an ad-free version of the site, you can go to SteelersDepot.com and hit ad-free in the upper right navigational bar as well too. And for $25 for 1 calendar year, you will have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. Alex, good stuff again today. We'll be back at it again on Thursday morning. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.